Sir, appreciate you bumping up my chat rate, man. I don't know. Why does a mosquito, why does a fly doesn't mosquito, and mosquito flies? I don't know, man. That's puzzling. Quite a riddle. I am. Vitali, we're making a woodworking mallet similar to the one that I'm using right now. This is the one in my hand. If I remember correctly, you're the guy that lives in Ireland, and you're of Lithuanian descent. Remind me if I'm correct, Vitali. getting there. We are getting there. Oh, that's great, man. Congratulations, and I'm glad you took the next step to, yeah, that's what I remember, and I'm glad you took the next step to, you know, following your heart, man. That's what it's all about. Welcome back. Checking the mic. I charged it for a while. Is it dead or something? Technical difficulties.
There you go.
Right, back. I agree with that. The only thing is sometimes you do have to do stuff, to get by. If you're a good salesman, you can swing some money doing that car sales. That's not a bad, you know, way to make money if you're good at sales. It's all about how good you are. Car sales, you don't make anything if you're not a good salesperson. You don't get part of what the guy next to you gets. At least here in the U.S. If you're not selling cars, you're not making income. So it's a lot of work, a lot of schmoozing people, making people happy, trying to, make people comfortable. But I see how that wouldn't align with your long-term vision. I could see you feeling like you might get trapped into that job also. So I don't blame you. The name of the game is what Vitaly wants to do. Sorry, trying to get my mic right. What are you working on right now, Vitaly? You got to have a project, right, to get your skills up. So I'm sure you're working on something. Let me know what you're working on. I'd love to know. Wrong hammer. I'm just trying to pare away this side here because it's not quite at the line. But I don't want to blow out the top. See, that's what I didn't want to do. I can't see how far I blew out on the top. Hey Juanita, how are you? I know I'm still working on the hammer now, Juanita. This is my other hammer, right? The one that I was kind of finishing last time. Maybe that's what you were asking. I'm working on a bigger timber framing mallet now. So I'm trying to use my mallet to do that. That's kind of like what I'm trying to teach people is to build things that they can build things with. Now, this is the one we're working on here. See, we've got one side roughly fitted, and this is the other side. Then I have to cut two more pieces out, and those two pieces will be used to be on either side of the mallet, give it some weight. I'm great. Let me see what Vitaly just said too. Oh, made out of particle boards. Is that a joke or are you serious? It's not all about what you sell so much, Vitaly. It's like, what are you making? We're building a timber framing mallet, Santorian. Welcome. We built a small woodworking mallet last week, and now I'm working on a larger mallet for timber framing applications. So, good question. Thanks for being here. Welcome. Friend of the show, Juanita. Shout out to Juanita. Shout out to Vitaly. Appreciate y'all both being here for again. That's a big deal for me. I haven't stained them yet. Good question. I am planning on doing tung oil or a linseed oil, boiled linseed oil on this one. Probably do the same thing on the other mallet. This one's going to be a little easier to stain because it's like maple. Actually, the ash seems a little easier. It's going to stain differently on the top than the handle because the handle is ash and the head is made out of curly maple. This next mallet is all ash. It's going to be helpful too because this mallet's too soft for this next thing I have to do, which is get this side out. I think it's too soft, you know. IMO. Yeah, yeah, I see. Yeah, particle board is hard to work with, man. It's not really an ideal medium for sure. It's basically paper.
You need to get you just like a little bit of stock, like some. You guys got lots of type. You got like what's that type of wood yew that you have over there? Ireland has great wood too, man. Some of the oldest trees in Europe, I think. I watched a whole documentary during the pandemic about Irish trees. I'm trying to just beat the mess out of it now. Yeah, yeah, ash is definitely native to Europe. No, basswood is I think a little softer. That's a good question. I got to get my wood book out to answer that. Um, so basswood is like a wood you would see in acoustic instruments, like the necks of uh, guitars. Luthiers use a lot of basswood. I think in drums, like if you make a real custom homemade drum set, ash bass would be the type of wood you would use to bend the rings on it to get your drums the right uh, to have that sound. Basswood has good acoustics. Yeah, yeah, that's why, and it's really hard on tools also. So it's like dulling my chisels up after one. It is like whatever scraps you have of ash are really. I burnt some small ash tree in my dad's wood furnace a couple weeks ago, and it was really hot. So it is good firewood. You don't want to burn good working wood, but if you have scraps or like a small tree and it just is too curved or something, ash has to be straight. Yeah, it burns hot. And pallets are made out of. It's a really good question. That one I might know the answer to. It depends on the country you're in, but in the US, most of our pallets are made out of like white pine and poplar. But I've found pallets made out of all kinds of stuff. Yellow pine. I've had really good pallets made out of yellow pine. Um, so yeah, it is whatever wood is available that's not suitable for building, but that doesn't mean you can't build with it. It's just not meant for commercial. It's not straight enough with straight enough grain, long enough boards to make, um, house lumber, stick building lumber. So pallets, I found a lot made out of poplar. So the most common pallet I had was pallets made out of poplar. Yeah. Here in the US, we have rules about what you can put on pallets and how you can treat them. So most pallet wood is actually burnable and you can use it to cook your food. As long as it says, usually it says HT on it, which means, or HD, which means heat dried, or it'll say KD on it, which means kiln dried. If the pallet is colored blue or red, it is held a chemical and it is not to be burned or used for firewood. If the palette is clean here in the US and has no coloring to it, I would always be careful because you don't know what people are putting on it. But that means generally the palette is good for any kind of use. It has no danger to you. And we don't treat our pallets with chemicals. They're only allowed to be heat treated here. Any pallet that enters the US is not allowed to have chemicals in it either. So, the only pallets here that are going to have chemicals are going to be ones that were brought in illegally. We have rules on what you can make, how you can treat pallets. Had another point, but I forgot it. Oh, so in the Caribbean, like Puerto Rico, um, pallet wood is what they use at all those street side barbecues. So if you like see all those street food stands, like in Puerto Rico, you see them throwing in broken up sticks. Those sticks are broken off of pallets. Yeah. So there should be like an axe David. There should be like a KD on there or something that indicates what type of that it was kiln dried. If there's any mark on there at all. Yeah. And that tells you that there was no chemicals added. It was just dried in a heat kiln. A kiln not the same as a ceramic kiln. A wood kiln only gets up to like 80 or 90 degrees. So like in the southern United States, our summers are hot enough to act like a kiln. Yeah, HT, heat treated. Yep. Those little codes mean a lot. Good man. That was a really great question. Juanita, I got to give it to Juanita. That's a great question that sparked a conversation. So shout out to Juanita for that. Yeah, that's true, Heather. Um, they're boards that have too many knots. So knots are another reason that boards are not commercially viable. If you look at like, let me bring an ash board over here and show you. All right, here we have a beautiful ash board, right? If you look at this and examine this piece of wood, it's perfectly straight cut. So the dimensions are perfect, the edges are straight, and there is not a single knot in this entire board. Now, this is a small board. If you had a bigger board, it's easier to have a knot because everywhere there's a branch, there's a knot. But the older the tree, the more heartwood you get like this, where there's no branches anywhere near it. And if it's a straight tree, you're going to have straight grains and straight figure just like that. So no knots, no imperfections make the wood better to work with. And that's kind of what Miss Heather was just talking about a second ago. This piece of wood here is stubborn. Got myself in the face with that. Compact jointer. No, I don't have I don't use too many pieces of commercial cabinetry equipment. And the type of joiner that you're going to want for cabinet making is going to be very expensive in the tens of thousands of dollars. So you might have to start with something more like a router. Get you a router and make a router table. And I'll show you what you would basically do. It's a bit out of my wheelhouse to comment on commercial woodworking equipment since I'm not a commercial woodworker or cabinet maker. But I can tell you that here's a router. What you do is you want to get a router. You want to build a piece of wood and mount this router like this inside the wood so that the router tip here comes through. So if I can pull it up, you see it has that spring in it. You're going to have a piece of wood above that. Let me get right in front of the camera here. You're going to have a piece of wood mounted right here, and then you use a different router tip. If you can see inside of there, you see that little tip? Depending on what type of joinery you're trying to do, like a sliding dovetail, you'll have a different router head. But what you do is turn your router into a router table. It's a hack so that you can make basically a joiner out of one. I'm from Minnesota originally. So other than that, you just do some research if you really want a joiner, like a joiner planer. I've never really used one of those, if I'm being honest with you, man. I've never done sliding dovetails or anything like where you have to build a jig. Because the stuff you're going to get into, Vitaly, you're going to have to build jigs. I don't know how much you know about jigs, and not the Irish jig. A jig is a piece of woodwork that helps you build things in a quicker and more efficient way. That's probably what you're going to have to look into. Um, not a router like my router plane. Like you need a electric router to mount it upside down under a table. Oh yeah, jigs are the way, man. It's a little tricky to figure out the math, but once you've made a jig and it works for you, that's what all the dovetails that you see in dressers and cabinetry, all those dovetails are made with jigs. And those jigs are like they just reuse them over and over again, and it always cuts perfect dovetails because they move the machine inside the jig. It's set up with this jig, and every time they push the router through it, it cuts a perfect joint. So they're not doing joinery by hand like what you see me doing is the slow and old-fashioned way of doing things. And it's also imperfect. You use machinery and jigs, you have a better chance of getting, perfect cuts, perfect depth, all of those things that people want in their cabinet. You know? Hmm. It may have just been burning really hot though, because blue means hot. Now, if it's burning green, you probably know this. If you see green flames or things like that, like what you see with cardboard has toxic chemicals in it. It's not supposed to be burnt, technically, though I've burned it before. You see green, that's usually a bad sign. Blue means it's probably burning hot. Oh, no problem, Juanita. You know what I'm here for. You know, I appreciate your questions. It adds to the conversation. That's what this is all about, a community and a conversation. I believe that. It's what separates YouTube from, TikTok and even Instagram, which is all about money. YouTube is about money. Don't get me wrong, but they have made a lot of money, and so now they're all about what I'm not saying that they're not still out for super like a lot of profit, but it's a more positive place to be um, in general than like a TikTok. TikTok lives are weird um, too, and they make their live people do all kinds of weird stuff to get there, then don't pay them right. Yeah, it's about community and conversation. I was a teacher for 16 years, and um, I love those kids. That's not why I left. It wasn't that the kids were bad, and I worked in a difficult system, but I didn't leave because the kids were bad. I left because I didn't feel like I was doing anything. If I have one person paying attention to me and they don't even really want to be there, that's a tough job to do for an entire lifetime, knowing that you're not really making a difference other than every once in a while, and you have to always be on your game all the time when you know that 99% of your time is being wasted. I hate to say that, but like that's what it is to teach now. It's all babysitting. And I actually embraced that at a certain point. I started to realize I was a good babysitter. You know, I know how to keep kids safe and teach them something every once in a while. But truth be told, that's not teaching. This is more teaching than that. I told my kids all the time, I said, you got to look into the world of media because media is where everything is going, especially if you're an American and you automatically have a phone in your hand. We all have phones. And some of those African countries appreciate it, Vitaly. Appreciate that man. That's big for me. Um, yeah, like in a lot of developing countries where they don't all have phones, they get a phone in their neighborhood, everybody gets rich because they all focus on doing things with media. I've seen some of those African kids dancing videos. I got to say, they're some of the best videos that people make online. The stuff they come up with, like the body movements and tricking people, it's almost like magic. And all because their village got one phone. They decided to start doing these dances, something they are not, they were naturally good at before. Yeah, big shout out to Juanita and Vitaly for adding to the conversation in a positive way today. Big show of appreciation to them. We're here every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at 5:30, and I'm also here for you. So if your question isn't ridiculous or inappropriate, get me stricken on YouTube, then I'm prone to like wanting to talk to you about it. I always been like that. I always like to, meet people on their level, man. Got to meet people where they're at. Those were really, really well thought out questions. Thanks. I'm getting down to the end of this side here. It is good for your soul. Um, Something about like building something that you can use every day or that that means something to someone or you. It's a lot. I sold a table a few years ago, and I asked the lady for $600 for the table, and she offered me like 800, and I said, "Well, I only asked for six." She said, "Well, I want to pay you what the table's worth." So to her, I saw her Facebook post with the table afterwards. It was a really nice stump table that I made. Um, and I knew that that table was going to mean something to her. She had her system set up on it. She was playing her video games, she had one picture with her dog sitting on it. You know, the table means something to her. You want to build heirloom quality pieces. That's always the goal. You build something that you could pass down, you know, so even later generations can appreciate what you've done. Ideally, yeah, stubborn corner right here. Try to get this flat. And just so you know, I'm using like a diagonal approach to the grain here so that it comes in flat. It's a way you can kind of not blow out the bottom and still grab stuff that's too high. Um, I had SketchUp for a little bit, and I was doing timber frame designs on SketchUp. It was awesome. I loved it. It can tell you exactly how to cut each piece. So that, and I'm not paid by SketchUp to say that, and I'll tell you why. I can prove it. I don't have SketchUp anymore because it's so expensive. It's like $600 a year, 600 US. So like I don't know whether you're still on the euro. If you're on the euro, it's like SketchUp's probably like 450 euros um, a year for you. But that is a cool program. You can design anything in there. It'll lay it out. It'll show you the joinery, how to cut each joint. Amazing, amazing tool. My cousin runs a woodworking business where he does all his stuff on a CNC router. So and he does cool stuff. I like what he does. It's a little hands off for me, but I appreciate it as a type of handmade piece. It is handwork because you're designing everything yourself. You're just having a router cut it out, you know. Yeah, that was me, man. I got my free trial. I spent like 30 days just doing all kinds of stuff, as much stuff as I could on SketchUp. And then when my trial ended, I said goodbye to it because there's no way I could afford it. I bet there's a SketchUp dupe though. If you can find a SketchUp dupe, and when we have this time, if you're in tomorrow or even whenever you come back, tell me about it because I'd like to use a SketchUp dupe. Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's what I mean. Like, if you know what I mean, like dupe. Heather, tell them what a dupe is. It's kind of hard for me to explain. Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, it's amazing. It's just super expensive. If you have the means, it's definitely an amazing program. Yeah, like a pirate version, or like it's like exactly like SketchUp. So I'm an animator also. I made an animated film, and instead of using Procreate, I use a Procreate dupe that's called iArtbook, and it's exactly the same as Procreate, but it only costs like $12 forever. So Procreate, you have to pay for a subscription fee. But the dupe, which is like the exact same thing, or like you say, almost like a pirate version, but not illegal because they've made a new program. Well, at least I think it's not legal. So here we have the basic layout, right? Now it just needs to be worked so that it fits completely around the thing. So that means working these joints on the bottom a little more. See, because this works right here. But I can see there's some spots that need to be worked out. Even my pencil line is beyond it. So the fact that it's fitting a little bit right now is a good sign, because if it's fitting dry, that means it's going to glue up nice and strong. Yeah, I can zoom in a little. Yeah. Try to turn it a little bit your way. Anything for you. Anything for you. This is ash, because like you said, it's good for handles and tools. So this is going to take a lot of stress, so I chose ash. I'm trying to match that angle right there. The hair. I got a hair here I got to get off. Just about a millimeter. Little blowout there if you saw that. So I got this blowout on the top here, but the mallet's going to be resurfaced. This one I did better. So this has to be squared up here, right? This has to be figured out right here. But in general, it's coming out about how I want it to. These two sides have to match and have to hit each other so that they can be glued up. This is the tricky part of this, right? Thanks. And it's just doing that over and over again until you finally get it. I gotta put this on. Take this mallet off the table. Oh yeah, so freecad.org. Someone put me onto that a while back, and I forgot about it. That's what they use in schools. Like if they have a 3D printing class, sometimes that's the program because they can't afford to pay Microsoft or whatever for that SketchUp. This is a tricky cut here. Miss Heather here to do all of that research for you, see? Best producer director in the business. Yeah, they're pretty sharp, man. I just sharpened them like for an hour before my last live on 2000 grit sandpaper. Um, I don't. I'm just gonna cut some of this top off because wood and sawdust, like that's okay for tiny cracks. But I've tried it on larger areas. When I first learned, someone told me that, and I tried it on larger areas, and it looks really bad. So, good question. Excellent question. Only a little bit. If it's only off by a slight bit, see, this is really sharp because all I had to do to get in that corner was push it in there. You can hear it. If it's making that sound, it's generally sharp. But so I'm answering several questions at once because the guy made a comment about the sharpness of the tools. But the question Juanita gave was, is it better to take a joining issue and use sawdust, or should I use sawdust to fill in cracks? Only if it's a very small crack, in my experience. But I did just do it the other day on something, and I can't remember what it was. I did use it on something because it was a very small area. I had to just fill in a tiny crack. Oh, there's more blowout. So these tops are gonna have to come off probably. I'm gonna have to cut an angle in them anyway, so. This is of course the other side of the mallet that I was working on last time. Seems a little higher on this side. This would be a situation where you want to take a routing plane through it. Somebody mentioned that last time, but I can't fit one between the two clamps, so it's not going to work for me. Also, if you're doing that sawdust repair, Juanita, make sure that you use only fine, fine, fine sawdust that matches the wood. Don't use a random pile of sawdust because it could be from something you did with pine or cherry or you know, like a walnut, and then the paste won't match the wood. So you want to use only sawdust from the piece that you worked on. That's kind of an important bit to know. And make sure it's the finest sawdust, the finest powder that you gather. It is a beginner-friendly project. We can kind of figure that out by how long it's taken me so far. So the first one took me like 4 lives to do at about an hour and a half each or so. So probably about 6 hours would be an estimate. But that's you never want to rush it. I was gonna say this a minute ago. Um, Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither is anything that you make out of wood. You have to like be able to leave it and come back to it. I found the best things I've ever built were things I took my time on and came back to when I was ready. You can't rush it. If you're trying to get it done tonight, it will be end up being trash. Like that's how it is. A really, really good woodworker taught me that. And I think I told you all about that last time. I knew this timber framer and he he really imparted that wisdom on me. Like, don't try to do things fast. Even using a circular saw, when you're trying to make a straight cut, you can do it. Just got to go slow, very, very slow. You have that kerf, and you want to make sure that you minimize, the curvature of that line. You can do that by taking your circular saw, making a jig or using a straight edge and going very, very slow. Yeah, yeah. Get your sleep and make sure that you're like fed and you're really like your mind is sharp. Drink a cup of coffee, eat a piece of chocolate, drink some tea. Make sure that your mind is really sharp when you do it. Oh, Palo Santo. Yeah. Um, I've never worked with Palo Santo except for we burn it here a lot. Miss Heather will vouch for that. We burn it for meditative reasons. Um, Palo Santo is supposed to clear the air of evil spirits. So um, we use it here just, kind of we make candles as a business and do incense. So it's it follows that we would have Palo Santo around. Has that great smell when it burns. Like working with any curvy wood though, it can be tricky, probably. I've never worked with Palo Santo. Having handled it, it seems a lot like mulberry or something like that, a very hard wood that's got knots and curves in it. So you need very sharp tools. Make sure that you're sharpening your tools beforehand and that after you use it, you sharpen your tools again before you work with anything else. You know, always want to have razor sharp tools. That's really key. If I can teach anybody anything, you want the tool to do the work. Woodwork is about using the weakness of the wood to your advantage and the strength of the wood to your advantage. That's the absolute crux of woodwork. You're using this piece of natural material for its strength, but when you're taking it apart, you're using its weakness against it. So you want it to be weak when you're cutting it, but you want it to be strong when it's in its application. That's the philosophy of woodwork. It's a saturated business, so you have to have an angle. What we do is no, it's okay. We can talk about anything, and candles are great. Check out our candle website, bettybakercandles.com. But we uh, do concrete vessels. So I pour the concrete. You can see some of them behind me to plug my company. Here's Here's an owl of concrete that I poured. This one has a particular scent in it. It's like a chai scent, like a chai latte. And then we have all kinds of different scents that we offer, but we pour the concrete vessels ourselves. So it's not easy money to make. We had a parade yesterday, and at the parade, if I'm being honest with you, we made like maybe 3 times what we paid to be in the event. So it was fun, but it's a hard way to make money. It's very saturated because you don't need many materials to start up. Yep. We'll plug our candle company here. Gives us an opportunity to do that. That's how we make our money. So any way you could support, of course, we would appreciate. I'm not at a super chat level yet, so I can't take donations through YouTube. Of course, if you want to buy a candle for someone for Christmas, we would really appreciate it, and we promise that you will have a great candle. It will be great. We have great individual, unique scents. So I think this side is probably almost done. Yeah, it's almost too wide. It's this side that has to be worked more. This side's pretty much done. Yeah, we can put that aside. Let me see where they are next to each other real quick. They're getting close. They remember they need to be touching face to face here for me to have it right. So this is the side that needs to be worked a little, I think. Actually, yeah, it's just that edge over there. Yeah, I think once this little corner here is done, this corner, once that's out of the way, I think it's gonna fit. Uh, Definitely don't want to soak a lot of different kinds of wood because you're looking for wood to be at its ambient relative humidity, which is about 11 to 14%. Um, Kiln dried wood is usually below that. That's why it's nice to air dry wood. It's always better to have air cured wood. But unless you're bending the wood, there's no reason to be soaking it. That's a technique used when you are going to heat it up, steam it, and bend it. And that's a whole different woodwork. My uncle does that. He is really good at it. He makes wooden boats. Hi, Mark. How you doing? All the way from Arizona. Shout out to Mark. This little edge right here is preventing it from sitting flush. So I just have to get this edge pared down. And also this is a little bit off here too. Good question, Mark. I am making a timber framing mallet. So similar to this right here, but bigger with a larger head made out of ash for really smacking larger pieces of wood. Love the interaction today. It's a great day for interaction. Chat rate is killing it. A little tricky with this clamp right here. I'm going to use my small mallet for this, speaking of which. Oh, best way to sharpen a chisel. Use fine grit sandpaper. This is what I use right here to do my fine sharpening. This is 2000 grit drywall sandpaper, right? You attach it to a board like so. This is 800 grit right here. So this is what I do for my crude sharpening. And then I have another board where I have 2000 grit sandpaper attached to that to do the fine grinding. Keep your blade at a 45-degree angle. Use a stropping liquid. It doesn't matter. It's just going to sound gross, but if you don't have anything around, you could actually use spit or saliva. But what I use is olive oil to strop with, and then wipe it down as you're sharpening it to get those little pieces of metal off, or to get that get the strop off. And that's how you do it. Real slow, 45-degree angle. We do have woodwicks to use here, but woodwicks are kind of a bit of a gimmick. I like them, but apparently in candle making, they're considered a bit of a gimmick. I have not used my own wood to make woodwicks either. So, and I actually haven't made any woodwicks, to be honest. So Miss Heather will keep me honest on that. We can do a next time, tomorrow if you want. It's time for me to sharpen these chisels again anyway. You know your chisel is sharp when it's cutting a nice thin slice against the grain, right? So if you're going against the grain and you're still pulling pieces off like that, you know your chisel is sharp. Like it's nice and sharp. But the way I test it is I take it and I run it on my hair, on my hand. If it shaves it off, then it's ready. That's how I test it. Yeah, I will do a live tomorrow if you want, or Wednesday if you'll be around. I'll do a live on sharpening. I have a couple of them already if you want to watch those in my stored videos. Uh, I just don't remember what the titles of those videos are. We relish in the mundane here, so sharpening tools is something we definitely do. Yeah, we'll be sure to do that, Juanita. You're such a good friend of the show. I want to make sure that I do that. You know, it's an important step in doing woodwork for sure. Now we got them so where they are just about touching here. Maybe a little bit of more pairing on each side here. we're going to attach another piece of wood on the outside of those. We're going to laminate those together. And so the mallet will be about 4 inches wide and 4 inches deep. So it's going to be a square basically, essentially like this, but 4 boards wide. See my dirty fingernails from making concrete. Yeah, I'm psyched about this, guys. It's going to be good, but I got to wrap it up for today. So appreciate everybody being here. Mark, shout out to new person. Shout out to Vitaly and Juanita, friends of the show. Definitely. Appreciate everybody being here. Appreciate the chat, all the questions. Everything looks great. Like as far as y'all, I appreciate y'all all being here. Like I always say, I feel blessed and very, very privileged to have this opportunity. And I don't take it for granted. And looking at the number and seeing there's 42 people in here right now, it breaks my heart to have to go, but I have to go attend to myself. Not feeling so great today. And I have to attend to the people around me. And that's what I would tell y'all. Make sure that you give someone a hug today. And thank you so much for being here. And I will see you all tomorrow, 5:30. Dad's Workshop, your mental massage. Out.